In Chains of Ice, John Powell escapes the real world. He goes back to his former home in Russia and he becomes a wild man. He goes feral. Jenny Volante is the heroine, and she has always wanted to be a wildlife observer, and she has a chance to do it for one summer, just to be an observer for one summer. But to pay for it, she has to find John Powell and try and convince him to return to New York. And for her, it turns out to be a deal with the devil. I write historical, that's where I started out. I write romantic suspense and I write paranormals, and all three of them have challenges. Historicals require a lot of detail. They require a voice that it sounds historical. You have to be careful not to say things like, she hit it out of the ballpark. And for me, living in the contemporary world, that's always a challenge. At the same time, the stories are a lot of fun because the guys can be real alpha heroes. They don't have to be politically correct. They don't have to say the right thing. And that's incredibly fun. The contemporaries are set in the real world, and it's easier for me to write dialogue. It's easier for me to write the story. At the same time, I have to watch for location. People know if I set a book in New York City, I have to make sure it's right. People know New York City. I can't get it wrong, and that's difficult. It's challenging in its own way. For me, paranormals are kind of the melding of the two. My paranormals have a basic setting back 1,000 years, or when the world was young, and I write a historical background for them set way back in time. And then the actual stories take place in the contemporary world. And for me, that's such a joy. I feel like I'm melding the two things that I enjoy so much. I was watching Grey's Anatomy, and I had an idea for a series of people who were flung together in the most difficult circumstances possible and had to make friends or not make friends. And I admired the writing so much in Grey's Anatomy. They were always thinking, what is the worst thing that can happen to this character? And then they would write it into the story. And I thought, I can do this. I thought, what if you had a bunch of people with gifts, supernatural gifts, and they were flung together in these circumstances and they had to make something work. And what was the worst thing that could happen? It was if the group that had recruited them to be fighting evil was suddenly destroyed, and they were there by themselves and they had to save the world all alone. The best part about writing is being able to create characters and write stories that are going to make people happy, that are going to give people hope. My readers are very dedicated people, and I really enjoy hearing from them. And they give me an ego, which is lovely. They tell me when I do it right, they tell me when I do it wrong, but for the most part they are so kind, and they tell me stories about how I've made their marriage better, how I've got them through an illness, and it's a great thing to be a writer. I love the paranormals. I enjoy writing them. Any book I write, I love. I write what I like to read, and so every book is my story, and I put my heart into it. But also, the paranormals are a lot of fun. There's a lot of freedom in writing paranormals. There are not as many boundaries as real life, and I intend to keep writing them as long as people will read them.